Hello and welcome to another episode of Earth911's Sustainability in Your Ear. I'm Mitch Ratcliffe, your host. We are back with another conversation. We're pleased to have Newday Impact Investing CEO Doug Heske here for another in our regular series of conversations about environmental, social, and governance-focused investing. ESG investing is increasingly a prominent topic in the financial world as business seeks to become more sustainable and accountable to the societies in which they operate. Today, we're going to talk about animal welfare, particularly companies that are working to improve animal welfare, both on the farm and for pets in our home. We'll be covering British retailer Sainsbury. They're traded over the counter here in the United States under the symbol JSAIY. Zoetis, which is traded on the New York Stock Exchange under the symbol ZTS. Nasdaq traded tractor supply company. You can find them with the symbol TSCO. And Central Garden and Pet Company, which is traded on the Nasdaq as CENTA, CENTA. Welcome to the show, Doug. I was going to ask you how you are today, but I know you're recovering from Omicron. I hope you're feeling better.
Mitch, thank you, and Happy New Year. It's good to be back. So I appreciate your patience today. I think I've got most of my voice, but glad to getting this over with.
Well, I know everybody is going to be happy to get past it. One of these days, hopefully the entire thing will go away, but maybe we're stuck with it as an annual problem. We'll find out next year when we talk this time. Before we start, I wanted to ask you about a new decision from the European Union. They released draft guidelines for describing green investments. Essentially, they want to prevent greenwashing. But what they've done is recategorized two sources of energy, natural gas and nuclear fission, as sustainable industries. They're not truly sustainable, according to the EU, but considered bridge technologies to a low-carbon economy. What are your thoughts on that decision? Does it make sense? And how does it change Newday's approach to assessing companies that may use natural gas and nuclear power?
Yeah, Mitch, that's a great question. And certainly 2022, much like 2021, is going to be defined by the work that we do in really understanding the characteristics of environmental, social, and governance metrics. And certainly over the course of the next 12 months, there is going to be additional scrutiny from both regulators and from the consuming public around what all of that means. I might pontificate just for a moment, given that it is early in 2022. I think that eventually we're going to look back and determine who did what for the benefit or the detriment of society and our world. I think that these are very, very important questions. And we've always been big believers at Newday that ultimately what we're striving for is to build a new ship for the future. But in the interim, we do need to build a bridge to that ship. Mm-hmm. And even similar associated with animal welfare and wildlife conservation, there are companies that are focused on improving behavior associated with all of this. Right. So as an example, if we talk about antibiotics in our food systems and whatnot, we still have to produce foods. There are still consumers of meat, whether they be chicken, poultry, or pork products. So ultimately, what we want to get people to is consuming less of it that has a more positive impact on our environment and on their human health as well.
Well, I think it's important that we not take an absolutist position, but that we provide people a path like you're talking about out of the heavy dependence on meat, particularly industrially produced meat. And when we talk about animal welfare, we're also talking about just the quality of animals' lives, both our domestic food sources and our pets. Now, how does Newday factor animal welfare and wildlife conservation performance into its assessment of companies? It's not a topic that a lot of brands talk about a lot. How do you keep track of that?
No, it's not. So let me begin today by sharing some perspectives about the work that each of us has a responsibility to do. As a father of 3 children today, I'm always mindful of setting the right example. And like many parents, I'm no stranger to Dr. Seuss and his writings and the film cartoons that have been produced from his work. Mm-hmm. Seuss's messages are really, really important ones. And one of Dr. Seuss's most famous works, The Lorax, was made into a full-length motion picture, as you probably know. It was one that I've read and have seen now many times at the request of my children. But over the years, I've paid attention to its really strong messages. And while the opening paragraph in this poem infers a strong message of doing what is right, Zeus also concludes with a message that's perhaps even more powerful. It reads, "Now that you're here, the word of the Lorax seems perfectly clear. Unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing's going to get better. Sad to say, but it's not." So as I reflect on these messages in our fragile world and economy and my responsibility as a citizen and as a human being, I am reminded that there is a world that we live in that is desperately in need of help. And while I'm certain that we can work ourselves out of the many issues currently at hand, I'm also certain that we won't succeed unless we treat these issues like national emergencies and work together in fixing them. You and I were just talking a moment about this new report coming out of the EU around being 73% of the way there to that 1.5% cap in order to avert the worst of climate change impacts. So we're there, and 2022 is going to be a really, really important year for addressing that.
Well, we said the same thing about 2021, and we had the COP26 meeting in Edinburgh and so forth, where there was action or activity, I guess would be the way to describe it, but not necessarily impact. And as you just called out, we're going to go over the edge to some extent. That doesn't mean this is a lost cause, but it does mean that we have to double down in 2022 and going forward to continue to improve the performance of the economy within the environment it exists in. And, when we talk particularly about the welfare of animals, there's a direct link there. You can see in the animals around us how our world is suffering. Now let's jump in and talk about this. And thank you for the Lorax quote, because it's one I think we should read to one another every morning rather than every once in a while. I was wearing my Lorax sweatshirt all weekend, by the way. So let's talk animals and animal welfare. Sainsbury. I've spent a lot of time in the UK. Sainsbury is essentially the biggest grocery chain over there. They're trading at about $15.30 or so. Their PE is 23 times earnings. They pay a dividend of 3.84%, and they have 15% of the market share in the country. What are they doing to embrace animal welfare? Can you tell us about their very comprehensive approach to looking at their supply chain?
Much of their work has to do with being a responsible corporate citizen. And, they, bottom line, have essentially established themselves as a model for all grocers. Mm-hmm. So antibiotic resistance is a huge issue for human health. And the UK in particular has reduced its antibiotics use in chicken and meat by 82% since 2012. So the reduction of antibiotics is fundamental to sustainable farming, and they are, as an organization, as a distributor of healthy ag and food products, are making that known. So that's critically important. This also ties back into consumer sentiments in a really, really important way. 60% of global consumers cite sustainability and social responsibilities as considerations when purchasing food. And 94% of consumers are more likely to be loyal to a brand that offers complete supply chain transparency. So Sainsbury, to a large extent, is building a reputation within the grocery store and chain business as being one that is a responsible steward.
Well, and they're certainly in the position in that market to send signals back into the supply chain to say that consumers want this change. What are they doing? Can you tell us about particularly their analysis of different animal sources and how they are working to improve the quality of life of those animals, not simply through antibiotics, but generally their treatment and behavior before they go to slaughter?
Yeah, so this is the responsibility, of course, of a lot of big distribution organizations, whether it be an HEB or a Kroger's or a Sainsbury over in the UK. Mm-hmm. they are working towards improving behavior associated with what they're hearing from consumers, and consumers are demanding this, right? So until consumer demand wanes for meat-based products, grocers continue to supply or provide supply of meat-based products. What's changing here through transparency is that they're educating the public associated with the attributes of using less antibiotics in food production and things like that as well. So, not only can a reduction of meat consumption positively impact the ethical treatment of animals as such, but it can also help curb greenhouse gas emissions, as we know, and as we've talked about on previous programs.
Sure, and water pollution from intensive cattle or pig farming, for instance, can be substantially reduced. How does all of this effort fall to Sainsbury's bottom line? Do you see evidence that they have customers coming to them because of these kinds of decisions?
Well, certainly as an organization that has built a reputation in this area, they have an ability to attract a consumer that cares about this. I think one of the most important things to recognize as well is that there isn't necessarily any direct impact to any organization's bottom line by changing this type of behavior. A study performed in 2009 by the Dutch government in sow farming revealed that the reduced use of antibiotics did not lead to negative effects or economic farm results for farmers. So this isn't necessarily a bad thing for farmers as well.
Now, at 23 times earnings, is Sainsbury a good buy right now?
Retail sales had a really nice boost last year due to COVID. Although there were some headwinds associated with the cost of upfront things associated with the COVID crisis, so it didn't directly translate into a profit jump for the organization. The stock has been up significantly over the last 12 months. So our belief is that investors at this stage can probably wait for a more attractive valuation in here. It's fallen off a bit just in the latest downturn in the markets, but we're patient investors. So the good news is that their profit circumstance is expected to fully recover in the coming year. And management is guiding higher going forward. So we should see that as an outcome in equity performance on a go-forward basis as well.
Okay, let's turn to Tractor Supply Company. That's TSCO. They're trading at about $230 a share. PE is 29.3. They pay a 0.9% dividend. But what really stood out for me is that for 6 consecutive quarters, they've had double-digit net sales growth, EPS growth, comparable store sales growth, and operating profits. And this is a Tractor Supply Company. They run Tractor Supply Company, Dell's Feed and Farm and Supply, and Petsense, the pet food stores. Not something I would have thought would explode. However, of course, people are spending more time with their pets. Why are we seeing farm supply stores doing so well right now?
Yeah, so it's not just that they're spending more time with their pets, but they're spending more time at home. And as you might expect, farm store revenues have increased dramatically over the past year and a half as a result of really unprecedented demand stemming from consumers spending more time at home and investing in home projects and investing in their pets.
Well, does that mean that could potentially fall off in the next couple of years from an investment point of view? Is it a good buy given the fact that we may be going out more?
I think that's a really good question. And I think that, the question is really what do consumers do from here? And do they continue to stay hunkered down? Is this a change in lifestyle that human beings are going to adopt for the long term? And how much longer will it take to actually get people back out into the marketplace socially where they feel comfortable as well? Certainly, Omicron has had a major impact on that for 2022 and likely will over the course of the next year. So I think that the one thing that won't change is the commitment that families are making to their pets, to healthy human living, to being less dependent on the major national grocery store chains and whatnot, and more dependent upon creation of food products at home where they have the ability to grow those.
Well, now that's really interesting, because I do believe that one of the things that COVID has allowed us to do is at least sample a different way of living. And it is potentially a valuable source of ideas about how to recast our how we impact the planet. Now, with regard to animal welfare, does Tractor Supply Company's treatment of animals and their switching to sustainable feeds and banning the use of antibiotics in feeds and so forth make a big impact in your opinion, or is that something that's more a secondary, follow-on impact that is just nice to have with regard to the stock?
Yeah, every little bit helps, but let's not be confused about their commitment as a big supporter of animals. Mm-hmm. The majority of their store locations host on-site vet clinics for wellness and preventative veterinary care. They are a regular giver to shelters, humane societies, annual animal rescue leagues. They also own what are and operate 180 Petsense stores, a small box pet specialty supply retailer. So, behavior overall has to change at every level. So whether it be through the distribution of more responsible feed to animals, or whether through all of those things that we just mentioned, Tractor Supply Company is a big contributor to this. And, we're wildly in favor of the work that they're doing.
It would be great to see them and other pet companies encourage manufacturers to move away from single-use plastic in their packaging. That's, of all the types of stores that I can walk in, other than grocery stores, pet stores are just filled with plastic bags full of stuff.
Yeah.
Are they making any kinds of commitments with regard to changing their packaging?
Not that we've noticed on the packaging side, but you bring up a really good point. We've talked about this before. So you take organizations like Amazon and think about the product packaging that they distribute every year. Mm-hmm. Just even small changes in their approach can have a monumental effect to pollution around the world as well. So it is something that I think is important for all of us to tackle in 2022, and we're going to be doing that.
So let's turn to Zoetis. This is a company, ZTS. It's trading at about 216, got a PE of 52, and it's got two major lines of business. One is in sourcing animals, and then in terms of caring for animals. They just announced this week that, or rather last week, that they're going to refresh its efforts to reduce the company's environmental impact, including reaching net zero by 2030 and using 100% renewable energy in their operations. That's a big commitment. That's 8 years from now. Like we were talking about at the outset of the conversation, it's time for action. This looks like action.
It is action, and we have been really impressed with Zoetis and their leadership. They're not just a leader in animal health, but their leadership team is taking on sustainability head first, as evidenced by the things that you were just talking about. So the company has outlined what are basically three primary ways in which they're contributing to healthier animals and the planet. It's through care and collaboration, through partnerships and support of colleagues within their communities. It is innovating in animal health to help solve sustainability challenges faced by animals and by people. And then finally, protecting the planet by stewarding resources and minimizing their direct impacts on company operations. So all of those things are really, really important. We love this company. They are a leader in pharmaceutical drugs, nutrition, and diagnosis for companion animal health and livestock, and working on a number of really interesting things that are potentially big catalysts for the company to move, or the stock to move higher going forward.
Now, one of the things that I focused on is that they have a U.S. focus on pet care. But globally, they have a focus on veterinary products. So two questions come to mind. One is, how does a migration away from meat potentially impact a company that is selling drugs and pharmaceuticals to help keep farms safe and healthy? And then as we make these changes, how does the quality of the lives of the animals change as a result of the reduced use of antibiotics and hormones?
Yeah, so as we were talking about before, I don't know that the quality of the lives of animals change in a significant way by the reduction of the use of antibiotics. And so there's
How about growth hormones, though? Because, for instance, in chicken farming, they pack them with hormones so that they grow big breasts and big thighs.
Yeah. So as you're probably aware that the injection of antibiotics in farm animals, at least here in the U.S., was basically outlawed several years ago by the FDA. It's something that's taking hold around the world right now. That's going to be very, very important on a go-forward basis as well. I do think that as it relates to the reduction of animal meat consumption, that this is going to take a long time to accomplish. And we've chatted about this idea of somebody transitioning to vegetarianism or veganism, that it isn't necessarily something that people have to adopt wholesale across their entire lives, but making decisions to do this once a day or once a week or a couple times a week ends up being really, really important and can have a dramatic impact on the contributions that the factory farming business is making to greenhouse gas emissions as well, which contribute annually to 25% of all greenhouse gas emissions.
Well, and it's important to note that Zoetis is not the one doing that kind of emission. They're simply a provider of medicine and other materials to those CAFOs. Now, and so I don't want to give the impression that they are contributing to that type of pollution, but you do call out the gradual roll off that we're going to have in animal protein consumption. Is that then a long-term consideration that an investor should be factoring into a decision about Zoetis?
I don't know that it's a long-term consideration. I think that, that meat consumption is going to be here for a long time. We've got, emerging middle-class societies and wealth, and as humanity continues to escalate up that wealth spectrum, they are going to consume more meat as well. I think that it's producing meat in a way that's more responsible, better for human health, and has a significantly more impactful and positive approach on animals.
So let's turn to the last of our companies today, Central Garden and Pet Company, that's CENTA. Trading at about $46, $47, 15.7 PE, price to earnings ratio. And they have phenomenal earnings per share growth of 51%, way ahead of the industry average of 2.13 over the last year. Why is Central Garden and Pet Company a sustainable investment?
The company's been working hard with partners to change the way that herbicides and pesticides and fertilizers are packaged, stored, and applied, and making the process more eco-friendly and safer. They also produce a line of garden-safe organic herbicides and pesticides too. So we do like the company. We like to characterize them as being capitalizing on two really, really important areas. So surging pet products and then healthy gardening, right? And, as we were just talking about, as people are spending more time at home, allowing for more time to cultivate, sort of improve personal lifestyles and all, they've clearly been a beneficiary of that. They are a supplier, not a retailer. In fact, Tractor Supply is one of their retailers, as is Kroger and Amazon. But they are an organization that doesn't sell dog or cat food, but are producing other pet supplies and have been very clearly a beneficiary of that focus that human beings, at least here in the U.S., have had on their home environments and taking care of their pets.
Well, so just for everybody's awareness, they make Nylabones, the chewable dog toys, Farnham, Four Paws, KT, K&H Pet products, Zilla brands on the pet toys and products side, and on the other side, the insecticide and herbicides, Amdro, Ferry Morse, Pennington, and Seven brands. Obviously, are these all of these brands one should look for, or are there particular brands under Central Garden that stand out for you? Are there parts of their business that are doing better in terms of making progress on these issues?
I think that overall, we define them as a responsible organization. So Nyla brands and any of the chewable pet products that they have are being produced in a really safe way for pets. So we like much of the work that they're doing. And, across the board, I think that that as a responsible steward in the sustainability business, they're an organization to look out for.
Well, that raises an important question, and one that I think about a lot, which is how do you help people understand these steps as a brand? Is Central Garden and Pet doing anything unique or something that other brands should be looking at to help their consumers understand the fact that they are seeking to reduce the environmental impact of the products?
I think that all of these organizations should be promoting themselves in a more sustainable way. We're quite familiar with the work that they do, being close to the sustainability space. But as a pet owner for many years, I wasn't intimately familiar with all of the brands that they had as part of their organization. So, and I think that there is a responsibility around education for the consumers so that consumers can make better choices. The other thing that I did want to mention, Mitch, is that you had referenced this earlier on in the conversation associated with ESG. And as you and I both know, that the transfer of a common share from one holder to another doesn't necessarily translate to impact. So,
Right.
It's important for consumers in general to understand when you're making ESG investments, it's not just about owning those companies, but doing something with your ownership and using your stakeholder voice to impact change at these organizations. And one of the things that we do as an organization is obviously contribute back to a number of really important leaders in the animal welfare and wildlife conservation space, like organizations like the Jane Goodall Institute and several others that are very, very close partners of ours. So this is a year for action, and whether it be through making responsible investments or just taking a step up in using your voice for action, it's going to be critically important on a go-forward basis.
It's important to vote your proxy. If you have a share, you should express your opinion. That's absolutely something that we don't do enough. I know that myself, I don't always take the time to send the message to the companies that I do take ownership of to make those changes. So thanks for reminding me. I wanted to ask one other question, because as investors think about distributing their capital, there's a new category of more direct investment, and it's characterized by these invest in family farming programs. You see it on Facebook and Twitter, promoted a lot. Is this a viable and interesting alternative for investors who want to make a difference? Should they be thinking of directly investing in farms in order to make these changes?
I mean, certainly that's an investment option, that it's not necessarily without risk. I think it depends on the nature of the investor. Right. But, they can be lucrative investments if you're investing in the right ones. I think that the first step that people should be taking with reference to the larger audience is just being mindful and being an active consumer. Right. This is not really hard research to do. Ask about your local farmers and what they're doing about reducing antibiotics in the food source. Buy products that are protectors of the environment. That's always, especially today, and this is going to get stronger and stronger, will be a lot easier to determine on a go-forward basis. So just as an example, Home Depot carries a green line of lumber that's not come from clear cutting. And most people go into Home Depot and sometimes they don't even know the right questions to be asking.
Right. They look for wood.
Yeah, exactly. If you're a buyer of healthcare and beauty products, make sure that you understand what companies are doing animal testing. So, and as we've talked about on many of these programs, reduce your meat intake, right? It's one of the more substantial things that you can do in helping our planet and certainly helping animals as well. You don't have to become a vegetarian or a vegan to make an impact. Just stop eating meat a few times a week.
Well, again, it's a different form of the vote we were talking about with regard to being a stockholder, is that you empower these companies to do right or wrong when you spend money with them.
Yeah. And I think that, I mean, this is going to be an interesting year. And, you know, as technology continues to expand in the food space and in the animal welfare and wildlife conservation space, there are going to be new companies that come to market too. As you know, as we've discussed, Impossible Foods is on the docket to come public in April of 2022. Beyond Meat is already out there, and you know there are going to be some great alternatives for people that are looking for plant-based products that taste like meat on a go-forward basis as well.
Well, I'm looking forward to those conversations, Doug, and you did a great job powering through your Omicron.
Thank you, Mitch. It's great to be back.
Well, we've been talking with Doug Heske. He's the CEO of Newday Impact Investing. You can find Newday Impact Investing at, strangely enough, newdayimpact.com. Newday Impact is all one big long word, newdayimpact.com. And, we talk about stocks on the show, and I want to remind everybody that you should do your own investing or investment research before you make any decisions. This is simply a set of opinions in a market full of opinions. So take the time to do your research as well. We'll be back soon with another innovator interview. In the meantime, I hope you'll take a few minutes to share this conversation and all the others that we've done on the show. There are more than 250 of them out there now. With your friends, family, let's get people thinking about these ideas, sharing ideas. If you have ideas, folks, please send them to me at mitchratcliffe@earth911.com. I will be happy to have a dialogue with you and talk about what we should have on the show. We'll be back soon. As I said, take care of yourselves, take care of one another, and let's all take care of this beautiful planet of ours. Have a green day.